more people join. But thank you everybody for joining us today. We have a great presentation on this rainy Wednesday. I'm Mary Ellen Brogan. I am the Director of Marketing over at Wood System of Care. For those of you that are just hopping on, we asked if you could put your information in the chat just so we kind of know who's in the call. We are recording this, so we'll have it available afterwards for anybody that doesn't want to take notes. We are going to have this be a little bit more interactive as well. So if people have questions, you can definitely type them in the chat. We'll moderate that. And then also just use, the raising your hand button on here. And, we can answer them throughout the presentation. So I just want to introduce our guest speakers today. We have Stuart Altschuler from Disability Navigators. He is the president. And then Elizabeth Dalzell, the Director of Community Engagement and Communications at Disability Navigators. And so we're really excited to have them here today. Thank you guys so much for being here.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome aboard. Let me just start sharing this presentation.
Thanks, Mary Ellen. It's really a pleasure to be here.
All right. So the focus on this presentation is you have you're supporting an individual and they're moving past age 18 and approaching that age 21 where they age out of the school system entitlement. I was there back in 2011 when my son at the time transferred went into DDD in 2014. So the original title of this was Accessing DDD Services, but that sounds kind of boring, and who wants a boring presentation? So the real theme here is there is life after graduation. And so I want to take a few minutes to share with you the whole process of how you get into DDD and what happens once you get in. And that's will be our agenda today, will be the whole process of entering DDD, selecting a support coordination agency, which is the organization that you need to work with once you're in DDD to access services. And then what does that look like and how do you do it?
And Stuart, if I could just interject for 1 minute, we're speaking according to New Jersey rules, regulations, and policies. I know there may be some people on the call who are familiar with Pennsylvania's, but we are strictly speaking in course of New Jersey.
Thank you, Elizabeth. All right. So and I was here as well to many people that have experience with this is how the process looks right now. You're in high school, you got to get into DDD, and you have to go through this step. So let's unpack this and see what this step 2 miracle really looks like. There's actually 3 things that you need to think about when you have someone who is trying to get in to DDD. You have to actually apply to DDD and establish eligibility. Part of the eligibility process is to complete an assessment, and I'll go through that assessment. It's called the NJCAT, or the New Jersey Comprehensive Assessment Test. And then finally, the last part of accessing services in DDD is selecting a support coordination agency, and I'll say a little bit more about what a support coordination agency is and what it should do. So DDD suggests starting the application at age 19. If you actually think about the timeline, you come up to age 18, and if the individual doesn't already have SSI and Medicaid, you want to apply for SSI at age 18. Then at age 19, you can start the application process. It doesn't make sense to actually start it sooner because that assessment that you have to do is only good for 2 years. And by the time you get if you started at age 18, by the time you get to 21, you have to redo the assessment again. So the target time to start is 19. If you're past 19 already, don't panic. The process takes about 3 to 7 months. Just starting it at 19 gives you a nice stress-free buffer. So what do you need? What are the requirements of actually becoming a DDD participant? Well, first of all, you have to be a legal U.S. citizen and resident of New Jersey. And this applies only to the individual that's trying to gain services through DDD. If the parents or the supporters are not from New Jersey or not from U.S. or not U.S. citizens, that's not really the issue. The issue is the individual residing in New Jersey and a U.S. citizen. You want to apply for SSI or already have Medicaid through another means. Here's the big thing, and I hear people getting confused about this quite often. You do not have to wait until you have SSI and Medicaid before you apply to DDD. You can still be in the application process for SSI or supplemental security income, and at the same time start your application to DDD. Your ability to enter DDD will be the latest of you turn 21 and you have you're accepted into DDD and you have SSI. So some people wait until they have SSI. That process can take a while. No reason to wait. And then the third thing is DDD has a set of criteria, which they call functional criteria for a developmental disability. So what does that mean? Well, first of all, you're going to fill out this, when you're ready to apply, you're going to go onto the DDD website and fill out this application. If you're already participating in New Jersey's KIDS system of care called Perform Care, you can use the short application. Otherwise, you use the full application. The purpose of that application is to help establish that the individual does have a physical or intellectual disability that began before age 22 and that it's lifelong. So, for example, establishing that they are on the autism spectrum, establishing that they may have a chromosomal mutation issue like Down syndrome, establishing that they may have cerebral palsy, establishing that they have an intellectual disability. So those are like you're trying to establish the presence of a disability, and generally you're going to do that by providing, as part of your application, IEP minutes, or your IEPs, your diagnoses from and assessments from neurologists or psychiatrists, whatever you have. I can say this. The application can be somewhat intimidating, and there's a lot of terminology on the application that that may be unfamiliar to you. You may be asked for documentation that you don't have. Don't panic. Don't put it off. I like to say the Cub Scout motto is do your best, answer the questions that you can, provide the documentation that you have ready, and just submit what you have. There is such a thing as partial credit on this test. About 6 to 8 weeks after you submit your application, you'll be contacted by DDD and assigned what's called the DDD intake worker, and they'll work with you to explain what else is needed and help you to complete the application. As I talk to parents and caregivers, siblings that are trying to do this, they get stuck and they kind of just say, all right, I'll figure it out later and I'll put it aside. If you don't understand it, skip it and return what you actually have. This is not your 1040 that you're trying to figure out where you need to answer everything. So we're trying to establish with this application that there's a chronic physical or intellectual disability that began before age 22 and it's lifelong. Once you've established that, there's a second step, and you want to establish that your condition limits your ability to care for yourself and live on your own. So there are actually 7 dimensions of looking at this, and here they are. So you have self-care, receptive and expressive language. the ability to learn, issues around mobility, self-direction. Who makes decisions? Is the individual now 18, 19, 20 years old? Are they able to make the decisions on their own, or are other people needing to make decisions for them, or the decisions made together? Your capacity for independent living and your economic self-sufficiency. The key is to be documented to have needs in at least 3 of those 7 areas. For instance, my son, when he went through this assessment, had needs in 6 of the 7 areas. The only one he did not have needs in was around mobility. So 3 of the 7 gets it done. And that assessment is done through what is called the NJCAT. What is the NJCAT? It's actually an interview that the intake worker will do with the individual or their family. So family can work with the individual and set whoever is going to be the respondent for this. And it's going to go through a variety of dimensions. And again, a lot around these 7 dimensions, but in particular focus areas will be support needs and self-care, support needs around behavioral concerns, support needs around medical concerns. So this will, on one point, establish, do you meet the criteria? Do you have 3 of the 7 areas? The second thing it establishes, all right, given that you do meet the criteria, what is your total level of need? And that is, when you're done with the NJCAT, the individual will be assigned a tier. The tiers run A through E, and folks with a tier A have the lightest support needs. Folks with a tier E have the highest support needs. In rare cases, a tier F can be assigned, but among the 25,000 people in DDD, there are only a couple dozen or so people that actually have a tier F. So that's very, very rare. So for all intents and purposes, we're talking A through E. If there is some significant medical or behavioral need, there will be an acuity that will be noted by this little a that you see after each tier. And that's given when there is some specialized care that's needed to address a behavioral or medical concern. And at that point, there's a meeting with DDD. We're now about 3 to 7 months after initial application, and the variation is dependent upon how long it takes really to get the application complete. And then DDD will inform you that the individual you're supporting is indeed eligible for DDD. You'll get a letter, and you'll be asked to select a support coordination agency. So that is the application process. I've covered a lot of ground. Are there any questions at this point? All right, I'm going to continue to move along. All right, so you've applied, you've done the NJCAT, you've met the criteria for at least 3 or 7 areas, and you've gotten your tier, and now you're asked to select a support coordination agency. It's really the final step to start accessing services. So what does that mean? Here's the Medicaid DDD definition of a support coordination agency. And I'll just, there's a lot embedded in here, so I'll just read it aloud. It's an organization approved by Medicaid and the Division of Developmental Disabilities to provide services that assist participants in gaining access to needed program and state plan services, as well as needed medical, social, educational, and other services. So like most of the services that you'll be accessing them, including support coordination, from providers that are approved by Medicaid and improved by the Division of Developmental Disabilities. There's no out-of-pocket costs. So as you're considering which support coordination agent to work with, it's not like you need to have consider what the price is. It's all covered through a separate part of the budget. Since you have to have a support coordination agency, it's fully covered. So you're really just at this point trying to figure out which agency you want to work with based on the criteria that I will cover. One point I did not emphasize, and I realize I want to come back to. You start applying at age 19, and you can actually be assigned to start working with a support coordinator up to 60 days prior to your 21st birthday, the individual's 21st birthday. Now, they can't access any services. We can't approve a plan for them until they turn age 21, but DDD actually will assign them up to a month or two ahead of time so that we can get started in the process. So let's talk a little bit more about what these support coordination agencies do. And first of all, first and foremost, we want to get to know the individual. We want to get to know their families and the people that support them, both within the family and maybe in any activities they do where there's a really important supporter. Want to be able to explain the applicable DDD processes and rules. Just one word of caution, you're not going to understand them all at the first meeting. The manual that guides DDD policy and procedures is over 295 pages long. So what we will do is, as things come up in the process, we'll make sure that you understand what the DDD requirements are at each phase when it's relevant to understand them. But we certainly want to, we view a big role and a big part of what we do as education. We want to write the individual's plan. All right, I'll go into a little detail later on what a plan is. And we want to monitor that plan. None of us are the same people now that we were a year or two ago. And the people that we're supporting are no exception to the fact as well, too. So you write a plan, you document the support needs, but that's going to change over time. So there needs to be a way of keeping the plan fresh, and that's through the monitoring process. Of course, the reason you're in DDD is there are support needs, and we want to find services to address those support needs. So we want to be able to connect you to different service providers who are going to address those needs. And we'll shortly go into the different types of services that are available. As I mentioned, the manual is 295 pages. Our staff knows a lot of the rules, but there are always going to be cases that come up where we're going to need some help and interpretation as to how to proceed. There are over 30 DDD help desks, and our role is to connect to DDD and help get guidance when the way to proceed is unclear. So it's very important that we have a very good and functional and collaborative working relationship with DDD. We want to collaborate with other government agencies. So your individual might be wanting to work and might be getting support from the Division of Vocational Rehabilitative Services, or DVRS. So we want to, there's an important collaboration that needs to take place between us and the individual that the person at DVRS that the individual is working with, called the DVRS counselor, and even the agencies that they're working with. So the ability to connect with DVRS. I have DCA there, the Division of Community Affairs. Sometimes when the individuals are looking for an apartment, they, qualifying for Medicaid may not have money for the apartment, so they might need a housing subsidy. DDD and the Division of Community Affairs work together to create a housing subsidy program that's available. Unfortunately, due to some recent budget cuts due to the state of New Jersey's fiscal challenges, it's not quite as available as it used to be, but it's still a really important part, especially if an individual wants to live on their own. And finally, we give the individual and family um, the means to self-advocate through connections to disability rights of New Jersey, South Jersey Legal Group, various other agencies that, if they're not finding, if they're having issue gaining the services that they need, they can get an advocate. Also in there should be the New Jersey Ombudsman's Office for Disabilities. So that's the range of what the support coordination agency is going to do. How do you actually end up choosing one? Well, first of all, DDD is a statewide program. You can access it in all 21 counties. Every service provider and every support coordination agency needs to list the counties that they work in. For a support coordination agency, they may say, we only work in Mercer and Hunterdon and Middlesex County, or we may be statewide. Not only that, but even if you're statewide, providers and support coordination agencies can say, something, I don't have enough capacity to serve Hudson County right now. I'm going to close Hudson County. So it's important to find a support coordination agency that not only serves the county in which the individual resides, but also is open in taking new clients in that county. You want to talk to other people that are already in the system for recommendations. I think a big way to do it is to reach out and contact the support coordination agency. How fast do they get back to you? How willing are they to sit down and explain and answer all the questions that you have? Once you decide who you want to work with, there is a form that DDD gives you called the Support Coordination Agency Selection Form, and you can list up to 2 agencies. The reason why they put 2 is that if for whatever reason the first agency that you select is not taking new individuals in that, let's pick Mercer County, it's not taking new individuals in Mercer County, then DDD will go to the second agency that you list. If the second agency is not available, or if you don't list the second agency, or if you don't return the form at all, DDD will auto assign you to an available support coordination agency. And part of what I want to do, as I give these presentations, as I talk to caregivers, is to de-stressify the process. You're not picking an agency for life. You can change your agency at any time. Anytime during the month, there is a form called the agency change form that you can fill out. DDD will call you to verify you and will make the change at the beginning of each month. And just one thing about us that I really just want to stress, this whole motivation for us starting our agency is that my wife and I have a son now 33 years old in the system. And my wife got started in this when he turned 21. She was looking for a support coordination agency, and one of the ones she contacted didn't even have capacity in Burlington County, which is where we live. But they did say, hey, it sounds like you would make a good support coordinator. So she worked in that for 10 years, wanted to start our own agency, asked me to help her out. And here we are. We've been in business since March of 2024. And just our mission is driven by the belief in the inherent worth of every person with intellectual disabilities, We partner with individuals, families, caregivers, and providers to deliver person-centered, responsive, consistent, and quality assured support coordination service. Why? To ensure that every individual has a fulfilling, the happy life that they desire. All right. So you've chosen your support coordination agency. I like to tell people that once they submit the form, the assignment to get started with DDD can happen anywhere I've seen from 3 hours to about 3 weeks. I don't know why there's that variation, but it's like once you submit the form back to DDD, the assignment's imminent. And as I mentioned before, you can be assigned up to 2 months prior to the 21st birthday. So what is the expectation? So once you're assigned, DDD expects the initial plan 1.0 to be approved within 30 days of starting either assignment, or there's an agreement, 2-page agreement that the individual, or if they're guardians, the guardians have to sign, called the DDD Participation Enrollment Agreement, and just lists the expectations for participating in DDD, which is a voluntary program. I do want to point out that support coordination is inclusive. So the only decision I can make about who we serve is which county I'm going to serve. I can't say, well, I serve Mercer County, but I want to serve Hopewell, but I don't want to serve Robbinsville. So if you're open, you're taking folks in the entire county, whether they're from Hopewell or Robbinsville. We can't specialize in particular diagnoses. We can't say, well, we're specializing in autism, but we're not going to take people with Down syndrome. So again, people call and they say, well, do you work with people with cerebral palsy? I'm like, we work with people of every intellectual disability. You can't distinguish here. And so we don't specialize. And once you work with us, you can decide to switch to another support coordination agency. We can't discharge anyone from service. And I think that's appropriate as well, too. As long as someone desires to work with us, we want to be able to work with them. All right. Before I get into accessing services, so like you're in DDD, you're working with your support coordinator, what comes next? Any questions to this point? This is a good time to take any questions that may have come up.
Stuart, I'm just going to add that this is a very interactive process, and that many individuals who are just leaving the school system or the adolescent system are used to being dictated by their district. And this is an opportunity for you now to really have your voice heard for your loved one, or for those who are self-advocates to really speak up for themselves. And as Stuart and I have discussed many times, it's hard to believe, but the adult system in a lot of ways is better than the adolescent system. And I'll share that I also have a child in the system who's 32 years old. And I didn't believe that when I was leaving the school system. You hear you're going to fall off a cliff, but we are here to ratchet down some of that anxiety and to help you understand that the system does work, and it gives you a lot of choice and a lot of freedom.
Yeah, that's a very important point. It's almost like a good news, bad news. If you think about your experience of, and by the way, I think Elizabeth, both your daughter and my son, we had good experiences with them in school. So it's not like we came from horrible school experiences. But you don't really, we may advocate and get some incremental changes on the IEP, but basically you're getting what they have. The adult system, you can construct this in how you spend your week, how you spend support that you have in the evening, support that you have in the weekend. There's numerous ways, and when we talk about the different services, I'll kind of illustrate that. I think one of the most intimidating things about the adult system is the amount of choice you have and the different ways you have of getting things done and the number of providers that you have to choose from. There are some parts of the state that the provider choice is a little bit more thin, perhaps down in Cape May County or up in Warren County, but in Mercer and Hunterdon and Middlesex and Somerset and the surrounding counties, Burlington, wide choice of providers. So I think it's that whole paradox of choice where sometimes there's so much that you're like, how do I make a decision? And the really good news is, again, a little different from the kids system of care. You can change your choice at any time. If you're working with a day program, or if you're working with a provider that's providing a direct support service and it's not working out, or you think you found something better that you want to try, you're one conversation away from your support coordinator from changing it. So it's it's almost like you're at a buffet. Try stuff. If you like it, go back for more at the buffet. If you don't like it, let's look for something else on the buffet. Thank you, Elizabeth. All right, let's continue here. So once you are now, you get the notification that you're assigned to your support coordinator, or if you don't get the notification, your support coordinator will contact you within 3 days. And I'm in our firm, I do the first contact because I want to meet every family. You'll get a contact. They'll go through some basic information. Then we'll look to set up an initial meeting. We try to do that within the first 10 days, but if you have families that are going on vacation, if there's like a big wedding coming up that they want to pay attention to, we'll work around the family's calendar as well too. So at this initial meeting, we'll go through certain documents. We'll go through potential services and explain what is this budget you have. And I'll say more about the budget a little later on and how does that work and how does that pay for services. A lot of people, they did the NJCAT. They're like, well, I don't even remember how I answered the NJCAT. That's fine. We will actually give you a copy of the NJCAT with all the answers that you have on it. And then there's certain sections that we're going to go over and review in detail. So for instance, one of the things on the NJCAT is what type of support is needed to make your bed. So, is it something where the individual can just totally make their bed? Is it something where they need to be reminded to make their bed? Of course, that could apply, we're talking about 21-year-olders, that could apply to 3/4 of the 21-year-old population. But did they need reminders? Do they need some like gestural prompts to help make their bed? Do they need somebody to actually they get it started and you finish it for thoroughness, or does somebody just make their bed for them? And we want to, it's indicated on the NJCAT, independent, mainly supervision, lots of assistance, has not done. We want to describe what that means. And I'll go through the reason why we want to go into that type of detail very shortly. And we have a getting to know you document. Individuals we all have support needs. There's not a single person on this call that doesn't have support needs. If I'm on the second floor of my house and I see a stain in the ceiling, I know there's something wrong with the roof. Well, I'm not getting on the roof to fix that, nor am I competent to do so. I have a support need for that, and I get a roofer. The individuals that we're serving all have support needs. The biggest difference between their support needs and everybody else's support needs is there is a budget to pay for their support needs. And so not only are people have support needs, but they, as we're going to see, like who they are, what do they like, who's important to them, and we'll capture that information. And as I mentioned before, we all change. So we're going to write an initial plan, but over the DDD requires us every 365 days, each year, we're going to refresh the plan. In some cases, if things have changed a lot, rewrite the plan. And so there's a new version of the plan every 365 days. So if you were assigned today and we end up completing and approving your plan on May 30th, then in May 30th, 2027, we need to complete and approve Plan 2.0. May 29th, because that's a leap year, 2028, we need to approve and complete Plan 3.0. So in addition, plans can be revised in the middle of the year. So let's say we write the plan and the individual, the family wants to add a service. They want to add a gym membership that's paid for through the budget. That would be a revision to the plan where that gym membership is added. Every time the services are changed in the plan, there needs to be a revision of the plan. And on average, I would say, especially new clients, have about 8 to 10 revisions in a given year as they're trying to figure out and add services, and sometimes subtract services that they're trying. We want to not only keep the plan fresh, but one way we do that is by contact minimally on a monthly basis. So DDD says minimally you have to have contact with the individual or their family or a provider once a month. Normally that can be by phone. However, once a quarter or once every 3 months, it needs to be a face-to-face visit. It can be in the home, at the individual's place of work, at a program they're participating in. If they like going to Chick-fil-A, it can be, we've done it at a Chick-fil-A. It can be a face-to-face visit, and at least once a year, there needs to be a visit to the home as well, too. I want to stress, that's the minimum. There are, I would say, the number of clients that have precisely one contact a month with us is the minority of our clients. Most of them, we're checking in on changes of services. They're calling us. We're reaching out to them. So the one contact a month is the minimum standard. But if that's all the family wants, we're not going to bother them multiple times a month. What I want to stress in this call out box here is we certainly want to include the individual. Now, we have, if you ask my son to participate in a 2-hour meeting to write his plan, you will get about 15 seconds out of that. He's just not going to want to participate, whereas legal guardians will handle that. Some individuals, participate for part of it. Some individuals are there for the whole thing. Some individuals are the leading voice. It really depends upon the dynamics between the individuals and their supporters. But we want to make sure that, we're taking the theme of nothing about us without us, that the individual has a chance, and the team that they want there has a chance to be there for writing the plan and doing the monitoring. So there's really two parts of what we call the plan. There's the person-centered planning tool, or the PCPT, and the individualized support plan, or the ISP. And they get back into the PCPT is about who the individual is. The ISP is about what supports they need. Taken together, that constitutes what we call the plan. So the PCPT gets into what are the individual's hopes and dreams? What relationships are important to them? What are the activities they like to participate in? What are their strengths? What do they feel or others like about them? What do they feel that they like about themselves the most? How do they communicate? What characteristics of supporters are important to them? For instance, are they do better with supporters that are very energetic and enthusiastic, or they do better with supporters that are kind of calm and chill? So that's the person-centered planning tool. And again, we might get the individual's voice on this, but if they are unable or they choose not to communicate, we would go to their legal guardians or their families, and they would try to give us a representation of what they feel is important to the individual. And we get really granular on this. It's like, well, they like movies. Well, what kind of movies, do they watch? Do they like? Oh, they like to go out to eat. What are their favorite restaurants? What's their favorite food? What's their least favorite food? So we include all that in the person-centered planning tool. The idea, here's very practically, if someone who didn't know this individual was coming in to work with them and they wanted to go out, it's helpful to know that they really like going to Olive Garden and getting the never-ending pasta bowl. So that would be, having that intelligence, that scouting report, if you will, is very important. The other part of the plan we're trying to write is this individualized service plan, and we're actually collecting support needs across a variety of areas. The main ones I want to call out are support needs can be at home, at home, in the community. And if they are working or participating in a day program, the support needs can be different at work. So people may require much less support in the home and supervision in the home than they do in the community. What are their support needs around self-care? What are their support needs around behavioral concerns? Do they have different behaviors? If they have the behavior, what triggers it? How often does it occur? And what's done when the behavior occurs? We have information about medical needs. Maybe they have gastric reflux. So, what might trigger that? Which doctor treats it? Are any medications taken? What might the symptoms be? How would we know that the individual is having a bout of gastric reflux? Then we want to get information about allergies, dietary needs. Are they on any special diets or any special type of food prep? Want to get their emergency backup plan and their needs around mobility as well too. Then we get into the part outcomes and services. I mean, people didn't go through the effort of DDD just to have a plan. That's a nice thing to have with that written document, but you want to be able to get services and supports for the individual. So we're really trying to get to is like, what are they trying to accomplish? And you think about up until this point, they've spent 30 hours a week. That 9 to 3 window is accounted for by school. Now it's open up. How do we want to spend that? But there's room in the budget not only to support what goes on during the day, but there can be support for activities in the evenings and the weekends as well too. So what do they want to accomplish, and what services are needed to help them achieve their desired outcomes? So let's go through some examples of this. We have this individual we're supporting named Felix, and there might be an outcome that we agreed to. Felix will attain greater confidence in social settings. So the service is a direct support person. We're going to hire a direct support person to take Felix out into the community where he can experience different social situations in a kind of a safe, protected type of environment. So there's probably any number of ways of achieving that. That's just one of the ways, and maybe the way that this individual and this family wants to try. There's a second outcome. Felix will become more proficient in playing the violin. So we might add to the plan music lessons from a violin instructor. There's maybe a violin instructor that's working with people in the community. They're willing to work with folks in our population, and they are willing to, rather than sending you a bill, they're willing to bill Medicaid to pay for the service. So that might be a service that we add to the plan, our music lessons. Finally, let's say Felix is working, but he doesn't have a driver's license, or we have a number of people that do have driver's licenses, but they just don't really like driving. So they need transportation. So Felix wants to be successful at his job, assuming it's not a a home-based job, a remote job, it's like, and he has to go to it, how's he going to get there? And we can set up a transportation service. Felix is comfortable with using Uber. We can do that where it's paid for through the budget. And there's really a whole range of outcomes and services that are available. So that's where I mentioned is this gets the choices that you have are really rich and cover a wide variety of areas. Let's take a look at a few of them. So I mentioned that Felix getting that direct support person to take him into community. That's done through a service called community-based supports, or CBS. One of the ways you kind of know that you're getting comfortable is that the system is you start using the acronyms and you're like, oh yeah, let's get some CBS. And there's actually different ways of doing and different ways of getting support for identifying the individual that works with Felix. By the way, parents, guardians, family, they can also be paid as the direct support person that work with Felix. Supported employment. Now, typically this other state organization, DVRS, or the Division of Vocational Rehabilitative Services, will be the first one to pay for that. But at some point, they might say, we can't help the individual anymore. We're out of budget. They only have limited short-term funding. So DDD will pick up supported employment, which could be something like a job coach to assist the individual at their place of employment. Dayabilitation is a fancy name for a day program. So if you're at your next barbecue and you want to impress your friends, you can swing around the term dayabilitation, but it's really a structured program, generally operating 5 to 6 hours a day, up to 5 days, 5 days a week. You don't have to go 5 days a week. That some day programs are flexible on that. And the day programs can look very differently. Some of them, the individuals are largely just in a room inside in the building, and they're doing various activities all day. And it's relatively slow pace, and that works for them. In some day programs, you're in the building for just an hour or so, and you're out in the community doing some type of activity. Some of them are more oriented toward gaining vocational skills. So the day programs can look very, very different. And it's important if you're considering one to actually go visit it and see it and say to yourself, do I think my loved one would be successful there? And again, if you feel like you chose the wrong one, we change it. Behavioral supports. Sometimes individuals, really need some extra support to help with their behavior. Maybe, Felix is one of those individuals, and maybe we want to give his direct support person or direct support people some additional skills in how to work with those behaviors. That would be through behavioral supports. I mentioned transportation before, and then the other one is goods and services, and that's that violin lessons. There's a whole range of community vendors that are, the classic ones we see are around music, around art, around gym memberships or swimming lessons. And there's even been, we have people that participate in horseback riding. I probably could do an entire 60-minute presentation on different types of goods and services. I won't try to squeeze that in here. But one that's gotten very popular, even things around life coaching and building skills for budgeting and skills for finance, which are really important for some folks. You can also use goods and services to pay for part-time tuition at a trade school or at a college. We have a number of our folks attending county colleges or even four-year colleges as well. And this is where I meant the budget. You're not paying any of these services, you're not paying out of pocket. There's a budget that's set aside. And remember, I talked about the tier. So the folks with the lightest support needs have a tier A. They have a budget of around $28,000 a year. Folks with the highest support needs have a tier E. They have a budget of around $86,000 a year. And for each tier, if you have extra behavioral or medical needs or this acuity, there's even more money that's available. So the budget for the supports program, which is where about 98% of the folks that come into DDD land in the supports program, is about, and it ranges from $28,000 a year to about $112,000 a year. There is a second way that you can participate in DDD called the community care program. You either get into the community care program by requesting to be added to and completing a term of wait on a waiting list that's basically about a little bit more than 10 years right now. And that community, or it can be through an emergency process as well too. I mean, suppose you're not even on the waiting list and something happens to the individual and their behaviors are such that they can't even stay in their home. So, DDD does not want to see any of our folks homeless. So in the community care program, there's an additional sleeve of money called individual supports that handle residential needs. And these can be placement in a DDD licensed setting, like a group home or a supervised apartment. They also can be just additional supports in the home so that the individual can remain in the home.
Hi, Stuart.
Yes,
sorry.
hi, Lisa.
Hi.
There's no sorry. Thank you for the question.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Lisa Colopy. I'm Mary Ellen Bergen's colleague here, family engagement advocate for Wood Services. I just wanted to say, Stuart, this is fantastic information, and I'm really happy that you're able to share all of this with us. I do just want to say that we have about a couple more minutes left of the session, and I didn't know if anyone had any wrap-up questions or anything like that that we can, go before the time runs out, if that's okay.
And that's very good because basically, as I mentioned, you have a budget. And I'll just say services have a specific cost. So you know what all the day programs that you're going to attend are going to have the same cost. They're all going to cost about $43 an hour for a tier E. So that's how the budget is spent. Everything has a specified cost. And with that, yes, let's take questions.
And also, if Stuart, if you're able to share the slides with Mary Ellen and I, and we can make sure that our participants also get them. I know we had some questions about, since it's a lot of information, just sharing the slides after the session.
And not only that, but please feel free to share the contact information for Elizabeth and me. As you can tell, we're parents in this. We're beggars telling other beggars where we found bread, and we want to be able to share that.
Yeah, we definitely will be able to share that. So we will open the floor. We have a couple minutes left. I don't know if anyone has any questions. I'm not seeing any that are coming in onto the chat. But
Rhea has a question.
Oh, there you go.
Hi, I'm Rhea. I'm a social worker at the HMS school in Pennsylvania, but we have students who come from New Jersey, and I do a lot of work with our transition specialist in helping families get prepared for transition out of our school. And so I'm trying to, this is really helpful because I'm more familiar with Pennsylvania than New Jersey. But just so I'm clear, it sounds like New Jersey, you can't apply early for the waiver system. It's more that the eligible age of, or you're saying right before 19? And I guess along with that question, if you can apply earlier, are there benefits to families who have, and children who have more complex needs for them to apply earlier so that they're more eligible or might be eligible sooner for the community care program?
Rhea, did you say Rhea?
Rhea, yeah, thank you.
Rhea, great question. You can apply as early as 18, but it doesn't really make sense because let's say you 6 months after you turn 18, 6 months after you apply, you complete the NJCAT. Well, now when you turn 21 and DDD is about to say, okay, we can assign you for services, you're just going to have to redo the NJCAT. Initially, it's only good for 2 years.
Got it.
So basically, celebrate the 19th birthday and start applying to DDD. And you can even apply a little bit later on. But to directly answer your second question, no, in New Jersey, the kids system of care um, uh, is really what provides the services, the benefits. The kids system of care, which would include the school benefit, Perform Care, the care management organizations, the family service organizations. That network really provides the care up until age 21. So you just don't have, there's no overlap in that. The one exception is, and if you have questions about it, contact me directly. There are provisions where you can start receiving DDD services prior to age 21. They're in situations where you weren't able to find an appropriate transition program from your local school district and you want support for employment. That's the one exception that's rare, but it is a new provision as of 2024. But no, let's say that you're halfway through your 19th year, you get accepted into DDD. You're now just in the waiting pattern until 2 months before your 21st birthday.
Thank you.
Okay, it looks like we don't have any other questions. Seeing in the chat if there was anything else. I want to thank everybody for coming to Wellness Wednesday at Stuart. This was a fantastic, Elizabeth, fantastic presentation. And what we will be doing is sending out an email after today's session with the content, the recorded version, as well as the slides and contact information as well, in case anyone has any other questions.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, it was my pleasure. And again, as you think of questions or as you kind of enter situations where this becomes maybe more relevant, or please feel free. Elizabeth and I do love to share about this.
And please don't hesitate to reach out to us via email or text or phone call, because we're all living the dream together, right? And we're walking a similar path, different shoes, but a very similar path, and we are here to help.
Great. I really do appreciate this today, and thank you so much. It was great information. We will make sure that we save it. Thank you all so much, and we'll see you next Wellness Wednesday.
Thank you.
Thank you.